Welcome 32 it everybody, TJ Wingard here with you for 32 Beat Writers. This is another episode of Beyond the Tape. Really appreciate you taking some time checking out today's video. Today we get to talk about my top 15 running backs of the 2025 NFL Draft. Really loaded class, a lot of really good players to talk about. Let's waste no time, let's jump right into it. You can see 15 all the way up to 11 here. I also do want to shout out some honorable mentions. I'll give you... let's go with the next 5 names that I would have had down. You have Brashal Tutton. He would have come in at 16. Really, for me, it's just the fumble and vision inconsistency. He battles with a lot of fumbles. The vision can be a little hit and miss, but when he hits the right hole, awesome athletic testing, and, dude, short area burst, long speed, physicality, contact balance, good build. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Tutton. It's just... I think it's going to take a little bit more work. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, he was the Shrine game MVP, only played 1 game this year at Arizona. A lot of his tape that I like, and from what I've seen at the Shrine Bowl, and of course he was the Shrine Bowl MVP, like I said, he looked really good there too. So I'm looking forward to actually doing some more on him, but obviously with just 1 game this year, you're really leaning into the 2023 tape, so... there is a little bit of a projection needed there. Jarquez Hunter would probably come in at my RB15. Big fan of Hunter. Looked really good at the Senior Bowl as well, specifically in the pass catching drills. That made me pretty optimistic about what he could be at the next level. On a similar mark, LaQuint Allen, very good pass catcher. That was a huge part of his role at Syracuse, and he looked awesome at the Senior Bowl as a pass catcher, and really smooth accelerator, can get to that top speed quickly and has some really nice top end speed. And then Kyle Monangai would probably be my RB20 as of right now. He's just, runs pissed off. Physical, a nose for blood when he's at the goal line, right? And there's stuff about that really fires you up. So he's, part of a backfield. All these guys really are a part of a backfield. Like Tutton gives you some really some really nice, moments. But because of that, especially starting out, let's probably want to limit those touches, get him coached up. Hunter's probably the guy of that group. That wouldn't shock me if he ended up becoming, a lead back, but still probably a complementary piece. Monangai, definitely a short yardage power type. And then Ja'Cory from Arizona. He also, maybe him too. Him and Hunter, it wouldn't shock me, but he's just, again, not a whole lot of tape from 2024 to look at, so he is just a tougher one to project as we move forward. All right. Then we get into running backs 15 through 11. You see Trevor Etienne. Here for the first 10 guys I'm going to list off, 15 all the way up to number 6. We're going to do it in this format. Just a little bit easier for me to be able to get these graphics prepared on top of everything else I have going on in my, my day job. But then the top 5, we're going to go into a little bit more nitty gritty. If you have any questions about these guys, feel free, shoot me a DM or, drop it down below in the comments. Would love to answer some of those questions. It's a loaded group. And, there's a lot to like about a lot of these different dudes. What I put next to the plus was just kind of why would I draft this guy? What's the thing that bumped him up over, RJ Harvey? Why is he number 11 instead of number 12? What is that trait? And then, the negative is the one main drawback. Why aren't they higher? So just want to simplify that. One, to explain the graphic a little bit. Of course, we got the heights, weights next to it as well. Trevor Etienne kicks us off. He's the running back from Georgia, obviously brother of Travis Etienne, who's had, a solid career. I don't know if he's necessarily warranted a first-round selection from the Jags, but we're really going to be interested to see what he looks like in that new Liam Cohen offense. But Trevor Etienne, awesome speed and acceleration, and he can make you miss in a short area too. So there's a lot to like from the athletic standpoint, really good testing. But between the tackles, man, the vision is rough. I think he's too reliant and too willing. Too reliant, I guess is the way to put it. He's too often looking for a reason to bounce it outside and just will often do it just because I think he knows he's a good player in space and can make you miss in that type of setting much more than he can between the tackles. So I think he's just trying to put himself in as advantageous a spot as possible, and eventually he's just going to have to, he's going to have to give that up. Unless he, of course, goes to a wide zone scheme, because then you're talking about, hey, get this guy out in space, get him out wide, let him time up that one cut, or let him get into a phone booth with someone and make a dude miss, and he'll be okay. Definitely a wide zone. Could do some inside zone, but again, work in progress when it comes to the vision and reading out those blocks. So again, I think he's more of a wide zone scheme guy, someone I would be comfortable drafting, day 3 for that specific scheme. Ollie Gordon, I'm not ready to quit Ollie Gordon. Doak Walker, a winner in 2023. 2024 was definitely a disappointment. But back in 2023, that was a bad offensive line. It was in 100 and teens in PFF run block grade. And it actually got worse this year in overall, D1 rankings. But I think there's only so long you can ask a guy to fight for his life, do any and everything possible making dudes miss behind the line of scrimmage. And he can do it for 1 year, but I think this year, that tempered a little bit. And some of that's also like bad quarterback play at Oklahoma State. It was just a bad year for anybody not named Ollie Gordon. And it was a bad year for Ollie Gordon too. But, so it was a bad offensive line and stacked boxes because that passing attack just wasn't going to get it done. But 6'1", 226, that is, that's one of the bigger backs in this year's class. I think he can get to his top end speed relatively quick considering that size. And when he does, he's got good top end speed and he can become, this kind of locomotive kind of running down the tracks right at you. I don't think he's super shifty. I don't think he's like the most explosive one cut guy, make you miss in a phone booth, anything like that. But it's the stiff arm and the trucking ability considering what he can do once he hits his top end speed and once he gets working downhill. That's what, just like Trevor Etienne, he's a flavor of back. Gordon and Etienne for me, definitely, I'm looking at day 3. The 3 guys ahead of it, I would personally probably draft late day 2. I'd be comfortable with really Harvey, Giddens, and James all in the 3rd round. Gordon, I'm probably looking at the 4th round. And him and Etienne, 2 very different flavors of a back, but they're both committee guys. Etienne, you're looking for, if you don't have a lightning guy, you don't have that breakaway big play dude, Etienne, he's also like a solid pass catcher. I think he put that on display pretty well at the Senior Bowl. One of the top receiving backs in the SEC as well. So he does have that element. So if you're looking for speed and receiving ability, Trevor Etienne's your guy. If you're looking for downhill, short yardage, goal line, a bruiser type, like Steelers lose Najee Harris, he's going to the Chargers. If they can't find anybody else, or depending on how late they wait to draft a guy, Ollie Gordon could be that downhill power back complementing a Jalen Warren type. So then we get to Jordan James. And he's interesting because, Oregon's offense is almost exclusively out of the shotgun. So he's a bit of a projection because it's like, what does this guy look like if he played an under center offense and had a couple steps to get up to his top speed? Right now, he just, gets the handoff and he's reading the tackles in front of him. He's reading the offensive line in front of him. A lot of runs between the line of scrimmage or between the tackles, I should say. Good change of direction. And I think he's got a really strong lower half. And that's, again, it's kind of hard to read because he gets the handoff and he's having to assess his situation and he's kind of bouncing and waiting. So I'm not saying he's Le'Veon Bell, but there's a little bit of that patience to it too that I like. That being said, I also really like guys who are decisive, see hole, hit hole, go. So I don't know if that would get any better at the next level with getting a little bit more, run under center with an offense with a quarterback under center versus what he did at Oregon. A lot of shotgun runs. But nevertheless, again, flavor of a back. I'd be comfortable late day 2, but I could also see where it's early day 3, where this guy is your bowling ball type. Also, 5'9", 205. That's like a really ideal build, for me. Low center of gravity, get a little bowling ball bouncy effect right there. I don't think the top end speed's anywhere near great, and you kind of saw that with the combine testing. He's not a super special athlete, but again, he kind of has that build that gives him a little bit of I don't want to say a little bit of a thumper kind of play to him, but his change of directions and stop-start ability plus strong lower half and that build gives him good, low center of gravity. He becomes a really interesting kind of power back complement to someone who's looking for that. So again, like I'm using the Steelers because I'm a Steelers fan, but like if you're looking for that short yardage kind of power back, and again, I don't think he's necessarily the biggest like bruiser. I don't even think necessarily like power back's the word, but if you're looking kind of for that bowling ball, pinball type of effect, Jordan James and that body type, I think definitely give you that. Big fan of Jordan James. He's a really good player. And again, some of it is kind of tough to project. This guy almost always takes shotgun handoffs. What does it look like if he were to get ahead of steam in playing a little bit more, with a quarterback under the center? Then we get to DJ Giddens, and this is where, DJ Giddens is my dude. Like, I'm pissed I couldn't get him even higher. Like, he's a really good running back. I love me some DJ Giddens, so I had to make him the guy in the picture here. Awesome athletic testing, but also, he's a guy that it doesn't feel like he has breakaway speed, so that's why when you see low 4.4, 40, you're like, interesting. That's a little something that's worth noting in this here profile for DJ Giddens. But one of the bigger backs, 6 foot, 212. I like that. Again, flavor of back. You're not drafting him to be your scat back, your elusive type. But it is interesting now that you think about, okay, does he actually have 4.4 speed? It's kind of like Matthew Golden, though. Like, just because he did it doesn't mean necessarily plays like that. So I'm not fully weighing that into the equation, but it is interesting and it makes you want to go back and check him out. I like watching DJ Giddens anyway. So any excuse I have to watch DJ Giddens, I'm going to probably take you up on it. But he's another one where change of direction, that lower half is awesome. His stop-start ability and ability to cut on a dime I love it. I really do. And it's not necessarily a one-cut ability. He's a bit of a long strider, so it's not like setting a dude up, chopping his feet, hitting you with a juke or a spin or anything like that. It's just more so he kind of like glides and he can control his body and he steers and maneuvers at full speed. And when he does plant his foot, he has the ability to kind of change and cut directions. And again, it's not a one cut. He's not planting and hard cutting the other direction. It's just more so he's got great steering ability and just like great athleticism, great functional athleticism when it comes to changing his direction. So I put change of direction in there, but it's not exactly, how you would perceive it normally. Because I don't necessarily think he's a great one-cut guy like Elusive, LaDainian Tomlinson, Ashton Jean, something like that. It's just more so he can kind of plant his foot and change his direction, and while doing so, at top-end speed, like the lower half, and the athletic testing is awesome. I think he's a fine pass catcher, but I don't think the routes are anything special, and if it's not on the target, I don't think he's going to go, I don't think there's anything special there for him as a pass catcher either. So, and then the run blocking, I think there's reason to believe he can get better at it the next level. When you are 6'2", 212, you like to think that he could get better in that area. But it is definitely still a work in progress as the way I see it. And then we get to number 11, RJ Harvey. Again, love the build, 5'8", 205. That's like my ideal running back build. Big Blake Corum guy because of that. Just kind of giving you context just in case you've never seen any of my videos and never seen any of my rankings before. But long speed, great combine testing, but also a short area burst. This guy can make you miss in a phone booth. He was quite literally UCF's lifeline of their offense. The only downside is at 5'8", 205. He's just probably never going to be a good pass blocker. But that's okay. I think you forego it. Again, he's a part of a committee. I'm not saying RJ Harvey, DJ Giddens, Jordan, any of these guys are going to be the headline dude. RJ Harvey's just like a really interesting addition to a running back room. And I don't know if I necessarily totally see Aaron Jones, but, Aaron Jones going back to Minnesota, kind of like the Rams last year, some people out there had comped Blake Corum to Kyren Williams. It's sometimes you see in that draft habit kind of, the pick happens and it's like, oh, well, he's playing alongside Kyren Williams now. I almost do wonder if this is a Vikings guy, mid to late rounds, third round maybe, with that 97th overall compensatory pick. Could that be RJ Harvey? I would like that, and I think there's a lot to like there, partnering him up with Aaron Jones, because there is some of that, foot quickness, make you miss in a phone booth type of short area burst, and athletic ability. But I also think he probably has a little bit more long speed than Aaron Jones does. I think he's more likely to kind of break away that long run. And, Aaron Jones has become a pretty nice pass catcher too. And I don't think Harvey's a liability there, but I don't think it's his calling card either. All right, let's get on to the next group of names. Damian Martinez, my running back number 10. Him, and then we're going to talk about with Scadaboo here a little bit. There's James Conner comps out there for Scadaboo, and for sure I see it. But I almost see more Kareem Hunt with Scadaboo and more James Conner with Damian Martinez. And part of the reason I say that is James Conner, I don't know if he has any one trait that he trumps anybody with. He's just really good at a lot of different things, and he just runs hard every single play. And the running hard thing, I could definitely see where it's like, yeah, that's Scadaboo. Not that Martinez doesn't run hard, but man, for someone who's 6 foot, 217, his feet are a lot better than you would think, a lot quicker feet than you would assume, and because then he's a little bit more shifty, not the most explosive, not the craziest guy in a short area, but better than you would think. So, and a lot of shotgun handoffs in his tenure there with Miami as well. I also like guys that kind of bounce around, go from one school to the next, and kind of hold up. And my eyes perceive step up in competition, going from Pac-12 to ACC, and he handled it with grace. He was also in an offense that didn't need him as much as Oregon State leaned on Damian Martinez. He also improved as a pass protector this year. I mean, it's still not great. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but at Oregon State, his pass blocking grades were in the teens and 20s, and this year he got it into the 40s. So making some progress there, but nevertheless, it's still obviously not great. Actually, 52.3 pass blocking grade this past year. So we made some progress, but it's still not nearly anywhere close to the best in the class. So really, I meant to say pass blocking there. So that's a typo on my end, but pass blocking was more my concern there. I think he's fine as a pass catcher. And that's kind of where, again, I see some of the James Conner, where Conner, over the course of his career, has become a really solid pass catcher. I think Martinez has room to grow there. So again, apologies for my typo. You're going to have to fire the graphics guy. Pass blocking is what I meant to say there. But I like the build, like the feet. Solid testing numbers, solid long speed. He's not really going to break off any 75-yard runs. At least I don't perceive that happening very often at the next level. But power back, again, using the Steelers as an example, if you're looking to replace Najee Harris, this is a good guy, I think, to do that. Devin Neal, man. Devin Neal, he's 4.4 speed away from being a top 4 running back in this class for me, legitimately. Love me some Devin Neal. Been a big fan of his for a while. I felt like I was one of the first people out there pounding the table for this guy will be a better receiving back at the next level than what you see at Kansas. Kansas, I think he only had 23 catches this year. They just didn't utilize him there that much. There is no reason why a team shouldn't use him as a pass-catching option at the next level. 5'11", 213. I am using combine weight for all these guys, by the way. At the Senior Bowl, he was 5'11", 220, which I thought was kind of an interesting mark there, but lost 7 pounds for the combine. I think that kind of makes sense. Look a little more fluid on the on-field drills, where he did look good. But his vision is awesome. I think he's very shifty, very elusive. Also plays with good, pound for pound strength and has some contact balance. He's a little bit higher cut, 5'11" versus, my 5'9", 5'8", preferred build. But even with that, I think he still carries, pretty good low center of gravity, stays low. And can kind of bounce off of guys because of that. Again, he's 4.4 speed away from being a lot higher on this list. That's just the one knock on Devin Neal. That being said, I also think it is nice would be to like have one guy turn one play into 6 points, right? Like 75-yard touchdown. I also don't think there's a whole lot of opportunity that like you don't see it all that often, and part of it's you need the right back for it for sure. But I also think athletes on the other side of the ball are that much better, and defenses are playing too high shells. There's another safety back there, so there's a lot that kind of takes away the opportunity, the chances that running backs would have at those 60, 70, 80-yard breakaway runs. So I'm not really worried about it, and that's why he's a top 10 running back for me. I'm still a big Devin Neal guy. Very, very nearly flipped him here with my running back 8, Brashard Smith. If you've been watching me with 32 Beat Writers and watched the Senior Bowl coverage, I'm a big Brashard Smith guy. Love what he can do as a pass catcher. Obviously, former Miami receiver, turned running back at SMU. But I think his vision is not bad, especially for a guy that's pretty new to the position. Certainly room for him to grow, but you're comparing him to Tyron Tracy. I think his vision's actually a little bit better. Very explosive, especially when getting outside of the tackles. He's like a big play waiting to happen. I think he's pretty elusive as well. Can play on his foot and make you miss in a short area. Change of direction skills are there too. Really, the kind of two knocks are like he's a great pass catcher, but the pass protection leaves some room to be desired. And I don't think at 194 pounds he'll ever be a very good pass protector. But who knows? Again, we're 1 year removed from him playing receiver. Pass protection is a little weird for a receiver to pick up, especially in a 1 year time. And then I've seen some people concerned about his frame, but like Bucky Irvin's 5'9", 195. I don't see why we're concerned about Brashard Smith. And I'm not saying he's Bucky Irving. I think they play very differently. But I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to make Brashard Smith my headline guy in a backfield. Like, I think maybe Martinez could be one day. I say that, kind of like James Conner led the way with the Cardinals this year. It works in tandem with, a super mobile quarterback of Kyler Murray, and there's some other guys there to spell him. Devin Neal maybe, but you're again just taking, you're laying on a sword of like you're not going to hit any home runs, but if you're fine with that, I think he could be. Brashard Smith probably not your lead back, but again, 1 inch taller, 1 pound lighter than Bucky Irving, and he kind of became the lead guy in Tampa Bay. So I really don't see any reason why he couldn't, other than he does look a little thin out there. So maybe that 1 inch does make all the world of difference in how you look at Bucky Irving and his build versus Brashard Smith. But I think also. Again, first year playing running back, give him another year or two, and all of a sudden he could be 204, and we're not really talking about this anymore. So I think there's reason for optimism with him growing as a runner, continuing to get better there. But an explosive athlete who automatically becomes one of your best pass catching running backs, that you have to offer. Really, I say that across the league. Really, I mean, like he's going to be a dynamic weapon there. So I love Brashard Smith. I'm a big fan of his. I'm comfortable taking him on round 3, and I feel like I'm one of the higher guys on Brashard Smith. So I'll stick to it. I've been waving the Brashard Smith flag this whole cycle, it feels like, and I'll continue to do so. So love the athlete, love the pass catching upside. I think there's reason for him to grow in the areas where he's frankly a little weak. Then we get Cam Skattebo, and again, like nothing against Cam Skattebo. Let me pull up my big board real quick. Last I remember, he was player number 65 on my big board. So I'm like looking at late second, early second round guy. Like me some Cam Skattebo. That being said, the reason he's not a little bit higher, again, long speed, had he run, and just to get you a full answer here, 66 on my big board. Had he run at the combine, I don't think it would have been anything crazy, but he did do the vertical. You see the explosiveness. Again, I don't think that was ever in question. Like, contact balance and making someone miss in a phone booth, that's Cam Skattebo through and through right there. Like, short area burst and getting dudes bouncing off of him and keep on trucking along. He's also a good pass catcher. Of course, you think back to the Clemson game, that little sluggo route on Taft, who's going to be one of the best safeties in college football next year for Clemson. That's a hell of a move. That's awesome to see. I do think that's kind of where, like, comparing him to James Conner, like where Conner is as a pass catcher now, I'd say Skattebo already is. So that's kind of an interesting comparison. And again, I do see some similarities with James Conner. You talk about someone who's just running pissed off. Cam Skattebo, like, that's him through and through. I also see some Kareem Hunt, like Kansas City Kareem Hunt. Like I could definitely see that in his game as well. So a lot to like about Cam Skattebo. A little bit shorter, but I think he'd be fine as a pass protector. I would just rather use him as a pass catcher than a pass protector at the next level. But I don't think that's necessarily his calling card. But I did want to talk about it since I've talked about blocking with some of these other guys. But yeah, another one of these guys where, like, if you told me he could run a 4.4, like, I'd be crazy not to have him in my top 4 running backs, right? But I'm willing to live with that. Late second, early third, you're looking for that contact balance, looking for that more power, short yardage between the tackles runner to spell out someone you already have on the roster, I think Cam Skattebo is a great option for that. Number 6, Dylan Sampson. I love his speed. I like his vision between the tackles. I think like inside zone, like this is another guy like for the Vikings. I would love to see that landing spot for him. And then just great jump cut, one cut ability. And again, so inside zone, man, like an outside zone for that matter. Zone blocking scheme really kind of screaming out to me for Dylan Sampson. He's a work in progress on the third down stuff, pass catching and pass blocking. But otherwise, there's a lot to like there, man. Only other real knock I can think of is like he's a 1-year starter at Tennessee, and it's an offense where you're so spread out and the receivers are so wide that, yeah, the running lanes are favorable. Like it's hard not to acknowledge that the boxes can be a little bit lighter and a little bit more stretched out, so running lanes can be a little bit wider for you to see, and your vision can look better because of that, and the one cut ability can be that much more on display. So I do want to take that situation into context here, but one of the fastest guys in this class. I love the one cut ability. I love the jump cut ability. Like this is the zone running back through and through in my eyes, and I'm a big fan of Dylan Sampson. And honestly, had he gone back to school and gotten one more year of tape, like would have been super, super high on him for the 2026 draft class. Then we get to number 5, TreVeyon Henderson. I've done some flipping and flopping around. There was a point where I had Henderson ahead of Judkins, but I still like Henderson. Like still like a round 2 running back for me here firmly. But I think Judkins is kind of growing on me, and especially going back and watching 2023. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But TreVeyon Henderson, he's an explosive athlete. That's evident with his long speed, the agility, the acceleration. He's just a fantastic athlete. And at 5'10", 202, he checks all the boxes there. Really nice pass catcher. Not only just when Texas sends an all-out blitz in the college football playoff and he runs 75 yard. He does a lot more than just that. I think there's some solid progress he's made as a route runner. He's got really soft hands, can make a nice catch when it's off target too. Pretty solid blocker too, which is nice to see at 5'10", 202. So that gives him a whole lot of third down value there. Vision in space, which then kind of our first negative here, vision between the tackles. I think between the tackles, this guy is definitely a work in progress. And then one of these guys that feels very willing and like he desires to almost in every run to bounce it outside. So when he's in space, he can set up a defender, plant that foot, make a miss at the right time. Like he's great one-on-one or in space. The cloudier that picture gets, the less confident I am in him choosing the right hole and hitting it decisively. Durability is a big question mark too, right? Like that first year at Ohio State, everyone gets excited, battles injuries, and then this year where they have him as the 1B, this is the year where he finally kind of brings it all together. So I definitely think you're drafting TreVeyon Henderson to be a part of your committee, which, let's just be honest, I've said that about a lot of these guys. That is just the state of the NFL. There is just not a whole lot of bell cow, 300-plus touch, a year type of running backs out there anymore. That's just where the NFL is right now. But that is certainly evident with TreVeyon Henderson. Like, he is going to have to be your 1B again. He's going to have to play as a complement to something else you have. And that's where you almost wish you could just partner up with like a Quinshon Judkins at the next level or a Cam Skattebo at the next level, David Martin, one of these other guys in this class, because what he does really well would complement those guys really, really well, and vice versa. Not super elusive. It's that sounds weird when you think about who he is, but at the same time, not a whole lot of jukes and spins and things like that. It's just more out athleting people. His acceleration is awesome, and college DBs just take bad angles against him because of that. Or the agility, it's kind of more in that DJ Giddens where it's just he is agile and can kind of turn his body and work laterally. It's not the LaDainian Tomlinson jump cuts and the jukes and things like that, like stuff you see with Anthony Gene T and some other guys ahead of him. So not very elusive. I mean, he is elusive to a degree, but it's just you would think of him as this scat back speed. I can't even think of a great CJ2K-esque, right? I just don't think he has that type of elusiveness. It's more winning with long speed, acceleration, be able to get to that top speed quickly, and then some nice open field agility. And then he's the 1-speed runner. This guy, that's his tempo. What TreVeyon Henderson runs at is what he runs at. So that's kind of where I think the vision between the tackles is probably a little rough. I think he's just maybe getting there a little too soon. He's kind of rushing the blocks. Just a little bit more variance. I think I used this a little bit when I was talking about the quarterback rankings. Pitchers in baseball, they could throw at a certain velocity every single time, but sometimes they'll throw it 2 miles an hour slower. Sometimes they'll throw it 4 miles an hour slower just to keep you guessing on what that fastball is really going to be and how much run it's going to have. I think if Henderson could vary his tempos just a little bit, I think that would open up the picture a little bit more between the tackles for him and ultimately make him a more efficient runner as well. And then when you talk about his acceleration ability to go 0 to 100 real quick, if you bring that variance, that just a little slight change in tempo, and then when you need to turn it to another gear, defenders are gonna have no chance. My RB4 is Caleb Johnson. Yeah, so that means Quinshon Judkins has moved up a couple spots in this, but I still like Caleb Johnson. I know the 40 time was a little concerning, mid to late 4.5s. But 6'1", 224, he's one of the bigger backs in this class. He's got a really nice, evenly distributed build. Like the top half, lower half, it's nice. Like that's my one knock on Judkins we'll talk about. Like the leg drive I don't think is really there. Caleb Johnson, it's power and bulk kind of throughout. Like I said, runs with plenty of power. He really is, like if I could surmise him, and this will ultimately be on my write-up for 32 Beat Writers, which by the way, new website coming just a little bit, I think within the next 2 weeks. So really excited about that. Definitely check that out. That's where my write-ups will be. And simply put, he's just this really fun blend of, size, power, and speed. And like anytime you're talking about a running back, and those are like the three words that come to mind, you're like, okay, it's worth talking about. So he comes at number 4. Also has good vision, and he's another one of these guys that he understands the nuance of the position. I think he tempos his runs really, really well. And I think he's got good long speed on tape. Like 4.56, okay. He breaks away from most people he is running away from, other than Darian Porter, who runs a 4.3 and a 6'2". So that's a special type of track athlete hawking you down, quite literally. Other than that, not a whole lot of hawking Caleb Johnson, pun intended, that I saw on tape. At least the 5 games that I watched of him. Pass catching upside. Iowa's quarterback play is just not great. And their offense, I don't really think asks the running backs to do a whole lot. Like, it's never been a big part of their MO, utilizing the running backs in the pass game. But I don't see why there's any, just watching him track balls in, I don't see why there's not reason for him to get better at the next level and at least be a functional pass catcher, if you need him to be. He's not a very good blocker, though. And that's a little concerning for 6'1", 224. You would like to see him step up and hold his own there. And I just think blitz pickup is just not his thing. And maybe the right coach can get that through into him, but blitz pickup is just not there for Caleb Johnson. He'd be a whole lot more appealing if he was a lot better of a blocker. I do think it takes some time for him to build up to that top speed. So yeah, maybe that's part of the reason. The 4.56 is what it is. Just a guy that, he's carrying 224 pounds. It takes a minute to get to that top end speed. But once he does, I think he does that breakaway speed. And the lateral quicks aren't great. This is not, super shifty. I mean, he's less elusive than TreVeyon Henderson. So, if I'm holding that against Henderson, I have to hold it against Caleb Johnson here. I do think he fits in zone and gap schemes. I think he definitely has that ability, but it's just kind of, his make you miss is going to be on one cuts, just plant a foot and, kind of steer his direction that way. It's not going to be juke spins, all that sort of stuff that I've, talked about with a few of these other guys. But otherwise, again, really interesting blend of size, speed, and power. And because of that, I'm still in on Caleb Johnson. He's a guy that it wouldn't shock me if he becomes a lead back. I'd almost expect him to become a lead back at the next level, partially because early down work is what this guy's made for. And then if you're telling me he can grow as a pass catcher, cool. Now we're talking about some potential 3-down value there for Caleb Johnson, thus making it easier for him to be an every down guy. All right, then we get Quinshon Judkins here at number 3. I've gone back and I've watched that 2023 Ole Miss tape, so I actually kind of want to talk about the negatives first. Specifically that first negative bullet point. More elusive at Ole Miss. And I don't know why that was, but he's just a little bit less of a creative runner at Ohio State. And I don't know if it's because, hey, we've got the speed home run threat in TreVeyon Henderson. We want you to be the thunder. We want you to be the authority, right? When guys try to tackle you, we want them to feel Quinshon Judkins, and then we're going to throw in TreVeyon Henderson as the dash, the lightning complements that. Maybe. But you go back to his 2023, and he's way more creative, and he's way more elusive in the short area. So I got to think that guy is still in there somewhere. So I'm still going to believe in that, Quinshon Judkins. He does have some hip stiffness, so the steering and maintaining full speed could be a little questionable, but I think he makes up for it in other areas. The leg drive, I really don't think is great. 3rd and 2, I don't necessarily know if he's a Caleb Johnson going to keep those legs pushing and driving forward, and he's going to move the sticks. I think the power you see him run with just comes with, he's a fast athlete, and he got good acceleration. And I think he just plays fast, plays hard, and that's where more the stiff arm and guys bouncing off him comes into play. I really don't see the power coming from his lower half. But he has a good combination of speed and power, and that's where you see, like contact balance and guys bouncing off dudes. That's also where like he'll set you up. That speed, power, and when he's going full strength, there's nothing you can do about his, fist coming at you, basically. If he's going full steam, like national championship against Notre Dame, like there's just nothing you can do about it. When that stiff arm comes your way, you're chopping and setting up, and he's got all the momentum in the world working at you, and then he just pushes you down into the earth. So killer stiff arm, good patience, very good vision. Like he's the guy with better vision between the tackles between him and TreVeyon Henderson. And I do think if I'm going to have to account for one of those carrying to the next level and being more successful and becoming a bell cow back, it has to be Quinshon Judkins, because he can just read it out better between the tackles. And TreVeyon Henderson needs to be in space. And at the NFL level, space becomes more and more of a premium. At each level of football you work up, space becomes harder and harder to find and to work your way into. So, because then I almost kind of have to have Quinshon Judkins ahead of TreVeyon Henderson. Again, like them both. But it's just kind of become to the point where like Henderson, round 2 guy, Johnson, early round 2. I wouldn't hate, a certain team, right? The Minnesota Vikings, like if they stayed at 24, I wouldn't hate that fit. That could be an interesting one. Judkins, yeah, like late 1. If we're honest, you should probably go late 1. So that, this is another Vikings, potential landing spot. If the Ravens did need a running back, he'd be one hell of a guy to add into that running back room. So just throwing out some guys there, and I'm trying to keep you guys updated with where I kind of feel like I'm comfortable having these guys come off the board. Like in my mock drafts, like where am I going to start looking at these guys? Judkins is late 1. And varies his pace really well. So, there's and that kind of goes in with the patience and the vision as well. Good third down player. I think he's a fine blocker, and there's reason to be excited about him as a pass catcher at the next level. I don't think the route running is anything crazy, but I think he's going to do his job, and he's not going to have too many drops kill him at the next level. So, yeah, Quinshon Judkins, man. Again, I think 2023 was probably better than 2024, but 2023 would have had him, there were plenty of draft analysts who had him ahead of Ashton Jeanty at the start of this draft cycle because of that. Like, that's the type of air that I think his 2023 tape is at. Like Jeanty, just outside that, tier of like, let's talk about him, Saquon Bijan. Or, Jeanty's Saquon Bijan. His 2023 tier tape is like a half step below that. And then I think 2024 is probably a half step below that, but that's still pretty awesome. That's still pretty great tape. So, really come around on Quinshon Judkins. And it's funny. Sometimes you get like prospect fatigue, and then sometimes it's like, you rediscover what you were so excited about with these guys over the summer. And that was a little bit of the last month with me and Quinshon Judkins. Number 2, Omarion Hampton. In any other year, dude, like this would be the dude I'm like pounding the table for. Is like, and I don't like taking running back first round, but like this would be the guy that I'm like, this guy has got to go in the top half of the first round. He's just so dependable, and I have a hard time thinking Omarion Hampton flames out of the NFL. So mid to late first round guy, mid first round, I'm starting to think about it. And honestly, like, Mel Kiper Jr. had him go as high as 12. In that one mock draft, because Jeanty was already off the board. I know they brought in Javonte Williams, but like, if you want to go all UNC with that backfield, I wouldn't hate it. They have other needs to address, but like seriously, I think the range starts at 12 for Omarion Hampton. That's how good he is. And he's one of these guys that's just like, the more I watch, it's like, yeah, I got to move him up a little bit on my board, a little bit on my board, a little bit on my board, and to the tune of him being all the way up to 15 on my board. Who knows? By the final tally, he could be all the way up to 12, and it wouldn't shock me. But he's a big, powerful brute of a human being at 6', 221 with really nice top end speed, 4.4 speed, and he can get to that top end speed pretty quick for someone as big as he is. Unbelievable contact balance. I believe it was the Minnesota game. Daniel Jeremiah posted the clip on his Instagram and you could just go follow it and you'll see it on his 2024 draft highlights or 2025 draft highlights. Safety comes in with a full head of steam and hits Omarion Hampton square in the waist on the right side. And Hampton just quite literally, like a peewee football player who's like way too big for that weight or that, age class, just bounces right off him and keeps running at full speed. And it's a college player, full speed, throwing everything they have at him, throwing everything at his waist, and Hampton just takes it right off the body and keeps on him trucking. And it's like, holy cow. Special running back we're talking about here. I think he's a zone and gap scheme fit because, again, he's got the athleticism to, like, if you want to, Minnesota Vikings, you want to run inside zone, he fits that through and through. But if you're also the Los Angeles Rams, and, they got 2 running backs, but you're running gap scheme because you think it makes it more efficient in the red zone. That's what the story's been for the last 2 years. He totally fits that, too. So, you name it, he fits it, and he's a really, really nice pass blocker. I think he's the best pass blocker in this class, the running back position, and he's a very good pass catcher, too. So both as a route runner, as a catcher, catching things off target, there's just not a lot that I have to nitpick about Omari Hampton. And really, these two things are nitpicks. He's a one-speed runner, but at 221, I don't mind it as much. Henderson, he was 202, and he wins with speed and acceleration, and I think he'd have more to gain by drawing defenders in to then throttle it up and be able to get by him with a good angle. With Hampton, it's like, yeah, you know what? If you want to hit your full speed, go right ahead. I want to see someone try to tackle 221 at your full speed, 100%. But I will say this kind of plays off of one another. One speed runner, and sometimes that leads into the blocks aren't fully developed, and he's running into his blocks, and he's just hitting the line of scrimmage. And because of that, sometimes there's not a whole lot of... There's a couple of runs where you're like, had he let this develop, who knows what could have happened? We won't know, but there's reason to believe he would have gotten more than just the 2 to 3 yards he got running into Willie Limpkin's ass, so... That's really the only knock I got on Omari Hampton. And again, I feel like I'm reaching at straws to come up with two negatives because the guy is an absolute alien. And then number one, by no one's surprise, Ashton Jeanty. I think the range starts at 6 for him, and frankly, I don't think he gets past 10. With what the Bears have done in the draft, it does kind of feel like they have put themselves in a position. I don't think they're fully luxury pick ready, right? Like I still think like you could go Shamar Stewart, go edge there. That feels like a Dennis Allen type of dude, tools and traits. But that being said, if you're like, yeah, well, Jeanty's got the better grade, and we've done enough there with Grady Jarrett and Dayo Odedingbo that we're going to stay true to our board and get best player available, and that's Ashton Jeanty, then, so be it. I don't think it's a bad pick whatsoever. Prior to that, it's like, yeah, you could take him at 10, but, IDL, edge, O-line, it's just bigger, there's more vegetables to be had there before you get into the dessert. And the same thing with the Raiders, right? Good offensive line. Now you've got a quarterback. I still think Will Johnson there at 6, that's a really bad coverage unit. But you could also go corner at the top of the second round, and I wouldn't hate that whatsoever. So because of that, Jeanty at 6 makes a ton of sense. And, if he does somehow get past 10, with how much Cowboys, Ashton Jeanty rhetoric there's been this draft cycle, let's just say hard stop is definitely at pick number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys. So 6 through 12, we're talking about rarefied air there for a running back. In a day and age where I think we've all come around, maybe the free agent market for running backs is undervalued, right? Saquon and Derrick Henry are two guys that should definitely be making more money than they are. But that's the free agent market. The draft market, I think we understand, especially in a class like this where, could take Jeanty at 6, but I could also take DJ Giddens in the 4th round and be freaking ecstatic about it, but again, I'm talking about this guy going 6 to 12 because he's that damn good. He's that good. So, that's just how special this guy is. I also want to hit on, I think the greatest running back prospects I've ever watched, he is in that contention. That top 3 is Saquon, Bijan, Jeanty. If I had to stack it up, it'd probably be that exact order, Saquon, Bijan, Jeanty. I might flip. I think with, granted, my rubric for doing these prospect notes has changed from when Saquon was coming out versus when Bijan came out. Bijan, I think, technically had a higher grade for me, and a lot of that is just the pass catching ability kind of boosted him up over Saquon. But just off the tape, what I remember, I'd probably say Saquon, Bijan, Jeanty. But even if you want to go the other way and say, hey, well, your grade's your grade, your numbers, how you came to that equation and your evaluation, that's what it is. So even if that is the case, it's Bijan, Saquon, Jeanty. So I did want to put that out there. I do think he's in that conversation for who's the best running back prospect of the last decade or so. But I do think Jeanty's probably step behind or half step behind those two guys. But we're still talking about an absolute alien here. So even the last negative here, I'm nitpicking. I'm reaching at straws here. Contact balance that when you see the you see the, that's how good he is. He gets his own comp. And when you see the Alvin Kamara comp out there, you're like, no, that fits. That works. A lot of times you'll get a running back who gets that comp, and it's nah. There might be 5%, 10% of Alvin Kamara in there. Ashton Jeanty, it's there's Alvin Kamara and LaDainian Tomlinson in there. And Hall of Famer with guy who could have reason to be arguing a Hall of Fame case. Short area burst is fantastic. Can make you miss in a phone booth. Jukes, spin, elusiveness, just change of direction, lateral movement, you name it, he's got it. Breakaway speed is absolutely there. I mean, the intro to this podcast has a clip of him running away from Oregon. So, breakaway speed is definitely there. Power in his lower half is awesome. That kind of goes with contact balance. But he's also short yardage, get that guy up and over the goal line into the zone. End zone, that is. He's got that ability. Sets up blockers and defenders really well. So sets up blocks. That's that patience. That's the vision. And then defenders in open space. Good luck. And he can win in so many different ways. Lowering his shoulder, going through you, or making you miss with his elusiveness. That it's not a very enviable situation to be a defender trying to take down Ashton Jeanty in the open field. I guess a negative I could have thrown in there is level of competition. Because again, if you're UNLV safety, you're not, power 4 safety, and I get it. So you're even more scared about your GT in an open space. That being said, he balled out against Oregon, and he had 16 forced missed tackles against Penn State. I reiterate, 16 forced missed tackles. I don't care if he had 30 carries for 100 yards, and that's 3 yards a carry. I do not care. Everybody else on that Boise State roster was overpowered, outmatched, except for number 2. That's the only guy who felt like he was on that same level of competition. Everyone else, I mean, on the defensive side, maybe you don't fully say that because Ahmad Hassanin is a pretty good player, and I like him as a day 3, defensive lineman. He's a good player. But on the offensive side, it's Ashton GT and everyone else. And 16 forced missed tackles against Danny Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter, Kobe King, Jalen Reed, the safety spot. Like that, a lot of dudes playing on Sundays. Kevin Winston Jr. not playing this year, but, throw him in that mix. He didn't play in that game, so actually don't. Like, we're talking about a special dude, and also 5'8", 211. Holy cow, that is my build. He's really 5'8 and a half, but any of the guys who had a half, I stuck with the first digit there. So, just for reference, we all like to add a half. I like to say I'm 6'1.5", 6'1" with shoes on. So I respect it. I respect it. But 5'8", 211, that is the perfect low center of gravity build for me. Like, I love it through and through. Again, only negative I could really come up with is pass blocking. He's just not a great pass blocker. 5'8". He probably just won't be. But that's okay, because he's also a great pass catcher. You don't see that a whole lot in 2024, but go throw on the 2023 Boise State tape. They lean into that a good bit, and he's awesome. And that's kind of why, honestly, Alvin Kamara and, LaDainian Tomlinson. LaDainian Tomlinson's kind of who the guy makes me think of. So that's kind of where I'm at with Ashton Jeanty, comparing him to a Hall of Famer. What could go wrong here? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this running back class, guys. I've given you my top 15. I've really given you my top 20. If you want to go back and if you missed those honorable mentions at the top, I gave you 5 more names of running backs that I really like. It's a loaded running back class. I think 30-plus guys are going to get drafted this year. I think this and the 2017 running back class are going to be the ones that we're kind of comparing years and years in the future now, whose class was ultimately better. We'll be comparing Ashton GT to CMC, Amarian Hampton to Alvin Kamara, whose careers have all played out better. It's going to be a really fun conversation the next few years. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether it's in the YouTube comments or in a reply back to this stream on X, or if you want to hit me up in my DMs, you can find me at TJ Wingert, spelled Wengert. Seriously, let me know what you think about this running back class. Whether it's the guys at the top or who's your if my team could draft this guy on day 3, I would be ecstatic. Me, it's definitely DJ Giddens. That's dude, if I could make that guy a Steeler tomorrow, I would do just about anything to make that happen. So let me know who's your sleeper, your late round guys. Brayshaw Tutton, is it him? Is it Kyle Manung guy? Let me hear it in the DMs or in the YouTube comments. But guys, that is going to do it for me. Really excited for the next couple of videos. The next podcast is going to be a 2-round mock draft with CBS Sports' Mike Renner. So definitely check us out. On Friday after that, we're going to be doing my top 100 reveal with Cody Carpenter. So we got a couple of guests coming on the next couple of episodes, and I couldn't be more ecstatic about doing that. And I hope you guys are excited to consume that content. Give us a follow on X at 32BeatWriters. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more football content, more draft content. We got you covered all year round with 32BeatWriters. But until next time, my name is TJ Wingert, and we are signing off.